Hello, everyone. Welcome. It is Jaime Fleres. I am the founder of Sacred Heart Healing Arts, and I am here today. This is the second week I'm joining you live. Last week, I talked about my personal story with Shamanic Astrology, and today I really want to talk about Shamanic Astrology as a practice, as a tradition, as a, a method of practice, a system of astrology, and what makes it unique and what makes it really freaking awesome, in my opinion. So I'm going to be going through 8 fundamental principles of shamanic astrology today. And even if you're not super interested in astrology, even if you're newer to astrology, this will be accessible, and this will be something that you can take something from, because it's also just a philosophy. So without further ado, I will get into what is shamanic astrology. So there are a few principles here. Shamanic astrology, and before I begin, I want to just preface all of this by saying, take whatever resonates with you in this live and leave the rest. So you can take whatever I say literally, you could take it mythically or metaphorically, or you could discard it altogether. So I'm going to really speak from the tradition of shamanic astrology here and share its perspective on life and the soul and being a human on the planet. So take what you like, leave the rest. Okay, that's my caveat. So the first fundamental idea is, so we have the zodiac, right? We have these 12 astrological signs that many of us have some degree of awareness of, right? So one of the fundamental ideas or philosophies or tenets really of shamanic astrology is that, there are these 12 signs, right? And in shamanic astrology, we really look at those as 12 archetypes. And I'll talk more about that as we go on. But essentially as a soul, so this idea of soul evolution, like what we're up to as a soul, which is greater than just this one single lifetime, is that ultimately our soul has the intention, has the desire to experience itself in all of the archetypes, right? In the fullness of what's possible for a soul or for being a human on the planet, right? Being a human. So ultimately the soul is wanting to master all of the archetypes, but we don't come into every lifetime. Hey, Amanda, we don't come into every lifetime trying to master all 12. We usually come into each lifetime generally working with between 2 and 5 of the 12 archetypes, and those are revealed by your birth chart. So we're really only up to mastering a few. We also come in, because life is good, we come in with a few archetypes that we're really good at. So we come in with past experience that we come in as a soul already really good at in this lifetime, which is also revealed by the natal chart. So that's the idea. The kind of larger scheme is that we're all up to, as a soul, we're all on this big track to experience them all, and that we focus on a few as a soul in each lifetime. Okay, so we got that point. The second piece of that is the way that we approach a chart. So I'm not an expert on other systems of astrology, so I can't necessarily speak to that and really compare the two. But in shamanic astrology, we see the natal chart, the picture of the sky when you were born, not on the personality level necessarily. Now, there are some parts of the chart that can speak to our personalities, and our personalities are definitely going to be revealed by the chart. But shamanic astrology really looks at your soul. It looks at your soul history. It can reveal your soul history, and it can also reveal your soul intentions for this lifetime. So what you came in wanting to learn and grow through, what you came to study. We look at the 12 archetypes as also the 12 mystery schools. So what school are you in? What are you studying? What tribe are you in? What are you studying? What are you up to there? What is your job? So those are some of the language that we use in shamanic astrology. So our chart can really, in shamanic astrology, really offers us a way to track the journey of our souls. And this is really important and exciting, is to know the purpose of our lives. So many of us in this time, and we'll talk more about what this time is all about as we go on. So many of us are wanting to know our soul purpose. We're wanting to really, really hone in and get more clarity on what we came to do. And it can be confusing. It can be confusing for a lot of reasons. Shamanic astrology is a really, really powerful tool for really anchoring into our soul purpose, what we came to do in this lifetime. Okay, so that's the next piece. The third component is that shamanic astrology operates on the principle, and you may have heard it elsewhere, as above, so below, as without, so within. So this system of astrology really looks at the cosmos as being equal to, the patterns of the cosmos are equal to the patterns of the human psyche. So it's not cause and effect. It's not that the planets are causing something in us. It's that they're reflecting something in us, right? So that it's actually this as above, so below sort of situation. So whatever we can observe out there, we can also observe in here, right? So it's not cause and effect. So I know a lot of people, there's a lot of things tossed around, especially when it's Mercury retrograde. It's like, oh, Mercury retrograde made me do this thing. It's not necessarily that Mercury retrograde is causing this. It's that it's a reflection of what's happening inside of us, right? It also can just, so there's more pieces about that, because we can also consciously participate with different cycles that are happening in the cosmos, just the way we can participate in the patterns that are happening within us to varying degrees of consciousness, right? So, but I just want to leave that there for now. So, but the next point is actually, we can bring our consciousness to initiatory processes. So there are cycles, there are rhythms, there are seasons that happen out in the cosmos that we are experiencing the corollary within, right? So when we can understand that corollary, what's happening, we can participate in the initiation cycles of our lives, which we've largely lost in our culture, right? These rites of passage, these initiations, we can participate in them with more consciousness. So I want to be brief because I do have a number of things to cover, and I don't want to be too long here on the Facebook, but you know what, I'm just going to take as long as it takes. So for example, these processes are going to happen, right? We have Saturn returns, we have Pluto cycles, we have Mercury retrograde, we have all these different cycles that happen out there. And we can either experience them as something that's being done to us, or we can experience them as something that we're participating with. So for example, I can tell you, and some of you know this if you've been following me, I've been in a Pluto cycle for the last year and a half. Pluto is about death and rebirth, and Lord, I have been in this cycle. But because I have shamanic astrology as a tool, I know what this cycle is about, and I can participate in this initiatory process with much more consciousness and much more empowerment and sovereignty than I would if I just felt like this thing is happening and I don't understand why. And you know, so it can really bring a lot of empowerment and consciousness to our experience of life. The fifth piece that I want to talk about with shamanic astrology, and this is a little different than other modalities of astrology, is that there are no good or bad signs. There are no good or bad sign placements in a chart. So if you've had experiences with other modalities, you might have heard something like, oh, this is a really favorable placement for your Mars, or for this or for that, and this is actually kind of concerning. This is like a not so great place for, or not so great sign for your Mars to be in. We don't see astrology, we don't see sign placement that way in shamanic astrology at all. There are no good or bad. In some ways, you might even say that that judgment has been colored by patriarchy, which I know is a big word to toss around, but that really there are no good or bad signs. There's no good or bad placement, that all paths are paths to enlightenment. So, you know, some people are like, ooh, Scorpio, you know, some people are like, ooh, Cancer, Mars for a man, you know, it's like, if you have those, don't fret. They're nothing bad. They're just different experiences. So all paths are paths to enlightenment. Okay. The next piece is this archetypal. So all astrology is archetypal to some degree. Shamanic astrology to me feels particularly Jungian and particularly archetypal. And so what I mean by archetypal is that they're patterns of being, like collective patterns of being, and there are 12 large governing archetypes that we see in astrology. So this moves us beyond the personality and into the realm of soul, into the realm of deep, deep patterning. So Jung talked about the collective unconsciousness. He talked about the anima and the animus. So a lot of these ideas, a lot of Jungian ideas are woven in, as well as many others. But it really marries modern psychology in the sense that it's really archetypal. And I will also add with that, with shamanic astrology, the archetypes are progressive. They're living, they're breathing, they're changing. So if we even think about archetypes in general, you know, if I were to say to you like the computer nerd, Like you would kind of have an archetypal sense of who the computer nerd is, right? What they wear, how they speak, who their friends are, what they do, what they're good at, maybe what they're not good at. It's an archetype, right? We didn't have that archetype in 1961, for example. So new archetypes can be created. And because of where we are in time as humans, we are rewriting the manual for a lot of the old archetypes. So for example, when we look at Capricorn, it's this archetype of the father, but we have an opportunity not to just see the traditional archetype of the father as maybe cold and uncaring and not connected, and some of the older ways that fatherhood was archetypally constructed, but rather how can we reconstruct, and a lot of us are up to that. How do we reconstruct, recreate what it means to be the father archetypally in our culture? So it's this ever-evolving thing, and particularly where we are now, we're looking at progressive ways of like rewriting and updating the manual for a lot of these archetypes. Okay, the next piece I want to talk about is that shamanic astrology really looks at this period of human history as the turning of the ages. So there's a lot that I won't get into here, but essentially we're at the end of and the beginning of a 26,000 year cycle as humanity and as a planet. And there's a lot of change happening right now. So in shamanic astrology, we call it the turning of the ages. And there's lots there. There's lots I could get into about how and why and the Kali Yuga and all these things. But there's two things to know. And so what I want to invite you to as we're talking about this is, how do I relate to this? Do I see this happening in my own life? So there's two pieces of kind of characteristics of this turning of the ages, two of many. One is acceleration. So this is the speeding up effect of our time, of our experience of time. So I don't know how many of you have experienced this, but sometimes a day can feel like a minute. Sometimes a year can feel like a day. Sometimes 5 years can feel like a week, We're having this sense of speeding up of time, or that time is starting to feel differently than it did before, right? So we are on what we would say is like this accelerated time track. Time is speeding up because we're starting to shift evolutionarily. Thank you, Kelly. Okay, so that's one thing. One quality is acceleration. So if you feel that speeding up, we would say in shamanic astrology, like, yes, that's part of what time it is on the planet. We also, when we look at relationships, people used to have lifelong relationships, but relationships are also being sped up. We're moving through certain relationships, romantic or otherwise, quicker. We're learning our lessons, we're finishing our cycles, we're learning and growing. So that can also be something you may be experiencing. The other kind of characteristic that I want to name around the turning of the ages is something called recapitulation or summary. And this is the idea that the main themes of your entire soul history, your whole incarnational time track, right? This time from like the beginning of your soul's journey on the planet through lifetime. Again, take or leave this if you're not into reincarnation, but that it's all reoccurring in concentrated form. So it's almost like this life review. We're getting this soul review where all these themes of our lives are coming in condensed form, in summary form. We're having the opportunity to complete unfinished business. We're having the opportunity to see and end cycles and patterns of our soul that we're ready to release. And we have a chance to work things out in a shorter period of time. It can also intensify things, right? When lots of things are coming together, right? So times are intense for most of us. I think it's fair to say. At least everyone I know. Okay, the last thing I want to say is shamanic astrology really looks at the sun in a different way. So for most of us, if we have a casual understanding of astrology, most of us know our sun sign. We know the sign that the sun was in when we were born. And shamanic astrology definitely considers that. Even if you just think about the sky, the sun is huge. It has such an impact on us as humans, right? So it colors everything we do, yes, but it is not necessarily the archetype of who we are. So, a lot of us have read like, oh, personality things are little horoscopes about sun signs, or you might have, even if you have explored relationships, you might like, oh, my sun sign is this, and his or her sun sign is this, or their sun sign is this. What does that mean? And we're looking like personality to personality, and that's how the astrology is offered. And so we look at those things really differently in shamanic astrology. So without getting too detailed, I'll just offer you this. The sun stays in a sign for 30 days, approximately 30 days. Approximately 10 million people are born in that 30-year period. So if the sun were to be an indicator of our personality, it means we share our personality with the 10 million other people that were born the same month we were. So because it's the sun and it's huge, it has a lot of impact on our charts, but it's not necessarily the most specific indicator of who we came to be in this lifetime. Now we'll go a step further and we'll look at the moon, right? So every planet has an associated sign when we are looking at the chart. So now the moon only stays in a sign for 2.5 days. So we're getting more specific to the moment that you came onto this planet, right? So we have the whole month, right, which is the sun, and then we have this 2.5 days of the moon. And so that gets a little bit more specific. Now in shamanic astrology, we look at the moon as really showing our past life, our lineage, both tribal, genetic, energetic, the whole thing. We look at ancestry, we look at the past. The moon represents the past. And I will go into that more in the next video next week. But essentially, it gets a little bit more specific. Now, even more specific than that is the rising sign. And this is the first sign on the horizon at the moment that you were born. And that sign changes every 2 hours. So we get much more specific. So for example, so that particular piece of the chart in shamanic astrology, we look at as being, so the rising sign, we look at as your life path, what you came here to what path you came to walk, because it's very specific to your birth. So you could have been born, oh my gosh, I have the same birthday as you. Oh my gosh, we were born the same year. Different time, different life path, right? So again, this is part of what the chart starts to reveal to us is, yes, the sun, this is going to color and fuel everything in our lives because the sun just has such an impact on the planet. And we have the moon, start to look at the past, and then we have this rising sign, we start to look at our life path. There's many other planets, asteroids, different things that have different pieces. So we start to get a composite and a complex look at our soul's blueprint for this lifetime when we can start to look at these pieces. So I say all that to say it's way more than the sun. And when you can open it up and start to look, because you might have been thinking, if you only know your sun sign, you might be like, my whole life, everyone's been telling me you're a Capricorn, and I read these things about Capricorn and it's not me. We might look at your chart and we might see like you have 8 planets in Libra, or you have 8 planets in Cancer. So those are going to have a big impact on you. So it's going to feel different. You're going to feel different on the inside than what that Capricorn horoscope tells you. So it's really sweet to be able to get a more nuanced and complex and really accurate picture of your soul's blueprint. So those are the principles that I wanted to cover. I will not review them just for sake of time, but you're welcome to come back to this video anytime. I want to offer you a few steps further. So I offer shamanic astrology readings, so you're welcome to go to my website. It's sacredhearthealingarts.com, sacredhearthealingarts.com. I'll link it in the notes below. I also have a free ebook, and I'll also link the link to that so you can sign up for it. It's a free ebook about shamanic astrology and relationships. So your own set point in relationships in yourself, what you came to experience in relationships, as well as how to find out what your partner or your love interest might be up to in their soul chart, so that you can really come to each other with a deeper understanding of one another's soul paths rather than just personalities or expectations for one another. And it can really support harmony in relationships. So that's a free ebook. I'll post it below. For the next 5 weeks, I'm going to be doing a free series, totally free, and it's on the content, it's related to that ebook. So not everybody has a chance to read a 30-page ebook, or maybe that's not your preferred format. So I'm going to be doing a series of short videos similar to this, and I'm going to be doing them on my community page here on Facebook. So not in my Jaime Fleres where you're finding me now, or maybe on a page that I've sent this to, but it's where you can find that is Sacred Heart Healing Arts Community. It's a page. So you can go to the page, find the page, and ask to come in, and I will welcome you in. And for the next 5 weeks, we're going to be diving deeper into how to look at your own chart, how to look at your partner's chart so that you can learn more about yourself in relationship, and you can learn more about the people that you love and how they operate in relationship. So next week, we're going to really dive deeper into the moon as well as the South Node. We're going to look at our past, what we're good at, what we came in expecting, what we can sometimes get addicted to, all those things. Then the next week after that, we're going to look at Venus and Mars. So this is your inner feminine and your inner masculine. So we're going to look at that aspect of our charts. Then we'll look at the rising and the descending, which I mentioned a little bit about the rising being the life path. The rising and the descending create an axis. They're on opposite sides of the circle of your chart, and they create your relationship axis. So we're going to talk about the relationship axis in class 3. In class 4, we'll talk a little bit about the asteroids and what they reveal about our nature in relationships. And then the 5th week, we'll talk a little bit about past life connections. So you can find all of that. I will also link to that community page, but we start next Monday. So they'll be on Mondays each Monday, 5 consecutive Mondays in the evening. And you don't have to worry about catching it live. You can always come on later. So for those of you who have joined, I know this is a longer Facebook, so feel free to return to this, come back. But thank you so much for allowing me to share some of the fundamental, this is many of the fundamental principles, but not by no means isn't an exhaustive introduction to shamanic astrology, but hoping to give you some key points so that you can come to understand this practice a little bit. And ultimately what I'd love to support you in is using it to experience more joy in your own life. So thanks for joining me. Enjoy the replay, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Please come back and I'll monitor this thread. I'd love to hear your comments and questions. All right, thanks so much. Bye.